And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me today. We have quite an interesting podcast this week. It is filled with some little news items here and there. It was a weird news week this week. So a lot of the stuff we're just gonna kind of talk about and simply just straight move on unless I figure something out not figure something out, but let's find something that takes me off as I keep speaking, which tends to happen every once in a while on the podcast, as you well know if you are a frequent listener, which there's not many of you out there, so let's go with that. So before we get to the news, I want to briefly mention we all lost a director this week in Curtis Hanson. His name may not be as well known as some other big directors out there, but he did direct quite a few big films for a lot of people. The movies were The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Lucky You, Wonder Boys. The last film he did was Chasing Mavericks, which apparently not a lot of people knew this. He was suffering from some complications of a heart surgery at that time, and he didn't even finish the movie. They bought someone else to co-direct. But two of the big movies that a lot of people will probably know that he did, one of them was 8 Mile, which kind of the one that I was introduced to him, was the movie that introduced me to him anyway. And the big one was LA Confidential, which I just watched for the first time like a handful of years ago, and it was really good. So he sadly passed away at the age of 71 due to natural causes. Apparently he was dealing with some health issue. I think I may have read early Alzheimer's. I'm not positive about that. I don't want to directly say that's what it was, but for some reason I remember hearing a story that said I think he was going through the stages of early Alzheimer's. But nonetheless, if you haven't seen any of his movies, LA Confidential is probably the big one because that was the one that kind of introduced the world to Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce, and even Kevin Spacey. I mean, he'd already done Usual Suspects by then, but this movie kind of put him back on the map and reminded people that Kevin Spacey was out there. And 8 Mile, of course, is another big one. The Eminem movie, which also has a bunch of other people in it, like the late Brittany Murphy and Anthony Mackie is in there. I actually forgot Anthony Mackie was in 8 Mile, but he's in there. And yeah, so obviously, thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his friends, and we'll miss Curtis Hanson. So there was 2 news items that dropped over the weekend that were kind of weird. Apparently, last weekend was Crazy News Weekend. One of them was that there are apparently talks to bring back Paul Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, back into the Fast and the Furious films. Apparently, Vin Diesel, who's of course not just a star, but he's also a producer on the movies, talked to, or has been talking to, the Walker family, more specifically his brothers, Caleb and Cody. They came in after Paul Walker sadly passed away because he hadn't finished filming for Furious 7, so they brought Caleb and Cody in to do stunt work. Not just stunt work, but body, to act as a body double, and then they would put CGI over their faces for their brother. And apparently, Vin Diesel's been talking to them, and Caleb has gone on and said that Diesel wanted their blessing, and that if it would be acceptable to bring Paul Walker back, and to let the fans know that he's still out there. Those were his exact words. I think the idea of them bringing back Brian, even if it's for like a quick cameo, like if it's like the last movie that they're gonna do and they bring him back just to have that big group family shot, I think that would be appropriate. But at the same time, it's still gonna take us out of the movie. It's not like we know that Paul Walker is still alive, because we know he isn't. So it's not like he walked away from the movies and that was it. I thought Furious 7 did and not just me, a lot of people thought that Furious 7 did a very touching and of course heartbreaking and thoughtful send-off to not just Paul Walker but to the Brian character. I think that was a good way to be like, yeah, I mean, this is our way of saying goodbye. This should be the fans' way of saying goodbye. And I think just bringing him back, even if it's CGI, even if we know that they're doing it in a respectable way, it's gonna take us out of the movie because we know Paul Walker isn't alive. We know that it's probably his brother or brothers at this point. I don't know. Just honestly, when I first read about this, I let it sit for a while. I didn't know what to think about it, and then at this point, it's like, I mean, just leave it alone. I mean, just don't do it. I mean, you want to do a cameo? Fine, do a cameo, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like they should do that. The other big crazy news item that came out over the weekend, which there's still been no confirmation about, is that there was a rumor that came out from Australia's Herald Sun that said that there is a prequel in the works for Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
And of course it's got all, us nerds all happy and everything.
Yes!
So the Herald Sun reports that the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road is going to start filming in Australia, because that's where they filmed the first one, and that it would be a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road following Charlize Theron's character Furiosa.
Yes!
And of course that made a bunch of people happy, and it kind of made sense, but at the same time, it's a rumor. It is the biggest. Think of the biggest grain of salt. Think of this grain of salt as big as the universe. That's how big this grain of salt is. And so it's one, it's awesome if that's true. Two, we're kind of inclined to believe it, except that in the report it did say that George Miller, or it sounds like George Miller, would possibly be back. Now here's, of course, where everything starts breaking down. Here's where we start chipping away, or not even chipping away, putting more salt on top of that big-ass grain of salt. One, after Mad Max Fury Road, which was plagued by delays because of weather, not because of, there was problems on set. No, it was weather that made Mad Max Fury Road delayed and made it, extremely hard on the actors and the crew to even get their work done. One, George Miller, who of course has directed all the Mad Max movies, went on record and said that he's going to take a break from the Mad Max world because Fury Road was such a tough shoot. Two, Mad Max Fury Road, despite being very well loved by all of us fans, didn't do as well in the box office as they had probably hoped. Now, of course, us fans don't care about the box office numbers, but studios in Hollywood does. However, the fan acclaim of Mad Max Fury Road could be enough for them to be like, we can look over that. That and George Miller's Mad Max Fury Road won a bunch of the technical awards at the Oscars, so that maybe could do. I mean, not like it won the big awards, but maybe that counts for something. Who knows? Now here's where, again, after piling on all that salt back on that big grain, you can start chipping away at it. George Miller also said that he had laid out a potential franchise when he started working on Fury Road, and that if they wanted to, they could start shooting sequels right away because he had already laid out everything. So there is potential that maybe he laid out a prequel to Furiosa, which after Mad Max Fury Road came out, all this love for Furiosa came out, which was well deserved. So could it happen? Maybe. Will it happen? I don't know. That's a completely different story. Also, if you're going to do a prequel and you're going to tell the story of Furiosa, you have to find someone damn good to replace Charlize Theron. But if you bring back Charlize Theron, of course, that would obviously skyrocket this movie. But if you're going to focus on the younger years, of course, you're going to have to find someone younger and find someone who can, we can believe will grow up to be the Furiosa that we saw in Fury Road. So that was two of the biggest news items that dropped over the weekend. Wanted to get those out. So let's talk about this week's news items. Again, it was a weird week. There was not a lot of big stuff that jumped out. There was some like smaller stuff, which we're going to talk about right now. We're just going to chip away at it. And we're just going to breeze through some of these news items because some of them just, they're kind of self-explanatory, or I don't really want to talk about too much. But the movie you thought you didn't even know you wanted or deserved is in the works. A Fruit Ninja movie. That's right, a Fruit Ninja movie.
Come on!
It is a family comedy that will center on a team of misfits who are recruited to become fruit ninjas in order to save the world. Why do we need a Fruit Ninja movie? We don't, but we're going to get one because that's what Hollywood thinks we want. I mean, it could be good. I can't even finish that sentence. Let's move on. The Equalizer 2 starts filming next September, and Anton Fuqua will return to direct. Denzel Washington has already signed on for a sequel when he did the first Equalizer movie. The film already has an announced release date, which will be pushed back now that they're just going to start filming this year. So there's that. Also, one of the producers, Todd Black, which was the one that actually confirmed this news was going to happen, said that some of the film will be shot in IMAX. There's that. Rings. Rings has been pushed back to February of next year. The new Rings film, which is not a remake, not a reboot, or a reimagining, because some people probably would think it would be or is actually a sequel to The Rings 2, has been pushed back yet again. Paramount Pictures has announced that the third The Ring film will move from its October 28th release date to next year on February 3rd, which would make it at least from what I know, I think it's the second or third move in the past 2 years. Now, the only wide release horror film that we're going to get in October is Ouija: Origin of Evil, which I don't think a lot of people are clamoring for. So October is going to be a very weak month for a lot of horror movies. Even though we got our fill probably with horror movies this summer, there you go. Rings will and maybe was, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go back and change some stuff considering the delay. Will follow a new doomed female character played by Matilda Lutz, who watches the famed video, through an email because Samara's going to up her game in the 21st century, and goes on a journey to discover the secrets behind the tape before her 7 days are up. The movie, the trailer didn't do too much for me. I mean, I thought it was creepy when I first saw it, then I saw it again for some reason. Not for some reason, I ended up seeing it again. I don't know why, but I ended up seeing it again. And the second time around, I don't know, I didn't like it as much as I wanted it the first time. I think it was because I was waiting so long to finally see something that I was like, oh yeah, finally I'm watching something, and then the second time around just wasn't good. But Rings will be directed by F. Javier Gutierrez, who directed a movie called Before the Fall, and will also star Alex Rowe and Vincent D'Onofrio. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like horror movies are just getting pushed back and pushed back. I mean, there's a new Amityville horror, I guess, movie coming out that was supposed to come out 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, and they pushed it back, and they kept pushing it back, and now it's finally coming out. Maybe, I don't know, unless they push it back again to January. So we're gonna get a new Amityville movie in January. Now we're getting a new Rings movie, which was supposed to come out last year, and then they moved it to this year, and now it's not going to come out until next year as well. I don't know, man. It's pretty bad. Speaking of horror movies that got pushed back, this one actually makes sense. Friday the 13th has been pushed back from its January release date of next year to a more reasonable and appropriate, and something that a lot of people have been saying made sense from the very beginning, October 13th of next year. Friday the 13th movie on a Friday the 13th in October cannot make any more sense. But for some reason, they was like, nah, we're releasing in January. Not anymore. So there you go. Pacific Rim 2 will start shooting in November. Finally. The Will They, Won't They sequel to an awesome movie that didn't get as much love as it should have is getting a sequel. It's coming out. It's going to start filming in November, and we still don't know anything about the movie. The movie will be directed by Stephen D. DeKnight, who was a showrunner on season 1 of Daredevil. Guillermo del Toro will stay on the film as producer this time around. And as far as we know so far, none of the returning cast is confirmed to be returning, although I'm sure that we'll be getting more news as the film starts filming or as we get closer to the shooting date. The movie right now stars John Boyega, of course from Star Wars The Force Awakens, who will play the lead and happens to be the son of Idris Elba's character from the first film. Newcomer Kaylee Spaney will play the female lead, and Scott Eastwood will also appear in an unspecified role. The report that mentioned that it was going to start filming this November also mentions they signed on a new actress in Jing Tian. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Tian isn't a really isn't a well-known name here in the States just yet. She does have 2 big movies coming out next year. One of them is The Great Wall, which is the Matt Damon movie about the Great Wall of China, and she will also be in the new King Kong film, Kong Skull Island. Films that I know her from, that I was kind of excited when I found out she was going to be in this. She's been in some action films, by the way, for those of you foreign action film fans. She was in the Donnie Yen movie, Special ID, and she was in the Jackie Chan movie, Police Story Lockdown. So if you've seen any of those 2 movies, she's been in there. She's a great actress. She really is. So kind of seeing her get more exposure here in the States is really cool. I mentioned the returning cast. One person that will not be returning, which I forgot to mention, is Charlie Hunnam. Charlie Hunnam already announced months ago that he was not going to come back to do Pacific Rim 2 for some reason. I don't know. Film will start shooting in Australia and even shoot in China. So there you go. Pacific Rim 2 does have a release date of February 23rd, 2018. John Wick Chapter 2 will have twice the action, according to its film director. Speaking with Entertainment Weekly, director Chad, I want to butcher this name, Stadhowski, I don't know if that's how you say it, revealed that the sequel to the surprise hit action film last year, John Wick, which starred Keanu Reeves, will have more action. And we'll start with a very long and impressive car sequence. I can't wait for John Wick. I was an immediate fan of the first movie. I love the soundtrack. And it was awesome just seeing Keanu Reeves just kick a bunch of ass and shooting guys in the head because they killed his dog, which all those people deserved it. Was awesome. I didn't think it'd be that great, but it was. John Wick. If you haven't seen John Wick, it's a good movie. You should go watch it. It's awesome. The sequel will delve more deeper into the criminal network of the hotel, as it was glimpsed in the first movie, and will relocate to Rome, where John Wick will deal with a secretive character known as the Brower King, that is played by co-star from The Matrix, Lawrence Fishburne. The rest of the cast will include Bridget Moynahan, Lance Reddick, John Leguizamo, Ian McShane, Ruby Rose, try saying that 3 times, Peter Stormare, and Common. John Wick Chapter 2 opens next year on February 10th.
Yes! Yes!
The Assassin's Creed movie coming out later this year will have its historic scenes be done in Spanish. Get ready to read. The video game adaptation that is labeled to change the way people look at video games, Assassin's Creed, is set to come out later this year in December, and it looks like it's going to do something pretty interesting. In the newest issue of Total Film, director Justin Kurzel revealed that the scenes that take place in the past will be historically accurate in the sense the film will be subtitled in Spanish, because the film takes place, well, at least some of the film, when it goes back into the past, will take place during the Spanish Inquisition. Now, there won't be too many scenes that go back in the past, using, for hardcore game fans of the Assassin's Creed series, the ominous idea, for those of you guys who don't know, they take someone who has a link to whether it be, in this case, the assassins, or and they kind of, try to, get information from them and try to get a special weapon. It's a whole new thing, and you can find out what, there's a lot that goes on in these games, so it's not very, coming from someone who doesn't play them too often, it's kind of hard to talk about them. But it doesn't matter. The game looks cool. The games are cool from the ones I've played, and the movie looks really cool. Justin Kurzel directed Macbeth last year, which was awesome. And it actually starred Michael Fassbender and Marion Cotillard, who was also in this film. And it looks great. And I think the idea they're like, yeah, we're going to set the historical scenes that take place in Spain, probably, and make them all speak Spanish, because that's what they spoke back over there. And it just makes sense. So Assassin's Creed opens on December 21st, so get ready for that. Ed Sekren joins. I've been saying this wrong the whole time. I've been saying this movie wrong, and I've noticed it. And every time I do it, I still say it wrong. I was called out in the comments last week. I wasn't called. I just guy corrected me, and I went back. I was like, oh my god. I've gone back to the other podcasts where I've talked about this, and I've realized that I've been saying the name of this property wrong. So I've always called it Attila Battle Angel, and I don't think it's pronounced Attila. I've always been calling it Attila Battle Angel. I think it's pronounced Alita, and I don't know. It was, you know how you have those moments where it's like you've been saying something for years and you think you've been saying it right, but you know you're saying it right in your head, but you may not be saying it right out loud, and then someone calls you on like, what are you talking about? And then you go back and you're thinking about it and you're like, oh my god, I've been saying it wrong this whole time. That was me. So if I've been saying Attila Battle Angel and I've been pissing off all the fans of this series, I'm sorry. I've been thinking I've been saying it right. In my head, because I've heard it. I've heard people, other news people that have podcasts or have shows talk about this project, and I always hear it, and I was like, yeah, that's how you say it. And I don't know. I'm weird. I shouldn't even brought it up. It's one of those days, guys. It's one of those days. Anyway, Ed Sekren, I think that's how you say his name, has joined Alita Battle Angel. I'm self-conscious now about how I'm saying this title. Alita Battle Angel as the villain. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Ed Sekren was the guy who played Ajax, aka Francis, in Deadpool. He is also the new transporter, and that didn't really work out for him too well. Anyway, he has joined the live-action adaptation of the manga. I'm just going to say the manga now because I'm self-conscious about saying the name. He will play the villain Zapan, or Zapan, however you want to pronounce it. In the source material, Zapan's bravery and leadership was questioned by this lead character in front of his men, and after she, from what I've been reading, gave him an ass-whooping, he grew hatred for her. And there's some other stuff, but apparently that was spoiler territory. I don't know if I want to get too much into that just in case. But anyway, the film, for those not in the know, Rosa Salazar from Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials will play the young cyborg who wakes up one day in a scrapyard with no memory of her past except her awesome martial arts skills. Awesome is my emphasis, by the way. And is taken in by a scientist, played by Christoph Waltz in this film, and leads a new life as a bounty hunter. The rest of the cast includes Jackie Earle Haley, which joined last week as a fellow cyborg, and the film will be directed by Robert Rodriguez and be produced by James Cameron. The movie will begin production sometime next month and already has a release date of July 20th, 2018. Will Ferrell drops out of his latest film before it starts filming. Now, it's not rare for an actor to drop out of a film before it starts shooting, although it is rare that it happens right before a film starts shooting. Unless, but there's like some contract dispute or whatever. But it's very rare that happens. That is the case with Will Ferrell, as he's dropped out of his newest film, Captain Dad, less than 2 weeks before filming is set to begin. Producers are currently looking for a new replacement, although one hasn't been found, at least from the time of this recording. It is unknown why Ferrell dropped out of the film. There's no reason given yet. None of his people have, come out and said, this is why I dropped out. Although it does continue the trend of him kind of dropping out of projects recently. Now, before we get to that little tidbit, Captain Dad will follow a family on vacation. The project isn't canceled. We'll follow a family on vacation, plans break down, and of course, shenanigans ensue. The film was already set to start filming. It already had a cast of Michael Cera and Catherine Keener and Jack Kilmer, and didn't specifically had a release date, but there was a plan to release it next year who knows if that is still the case. Now, going back to Will Ferrell kind of dropping out of projects, earlier this year he dropped out of the project that we briefly talked about here on the show, the Ronald Reagan film about his Alzheimer's while he was, president of the United States. Now, the film drew a lot of backlash because the way the film was presented, at least from the early descriptions, it was gonna be kind of like a comedy, maybe like a black comedy or a dark comedy, and Ferrell was gonna play Ronald Reagan. Before, of course, he dropped out. And again, one of the reasons why he dropped out, a lot of people assumed it was because there was a lot of backlash toward it. I think someone from Ronald Reagan's family came out and they wrote a letter, like they didn't like the fact that they were going to do a movie about his Alzheimer's and kind of make it like a joke. But that film was still in the very early stages, as opposed to Captain Dad, which was only set to begin filming 2 weeks from now. Now, Ferrell still has other projects lined up, like the humorous take on Sherlock Holmes with John C. Reilly, the sequel to Daddy's Home, the James Franco-directed drama comedy period film Zeroville, which is based off a novel by Steven Erikson, and another comedy called The House that will star Amy Poehler. So we'll still have some Will Ferrell in our lives. Jamie Dornan is eyed for Will Scarlet in Robin Hood Origins. Jamie Dornan, of course, is enjoying the success. Maybe? Is that the right word to use? Probably is. Of playing Christian Grey in the 50 Shades of Grey films. And he's going to probably play another literary character. Of course, this one probably has more respect amongst people who read books. That's probably not a good thing to say. But it's my podcast. I can say whatever I want. Reports say that Dornan is eyed for the lead role of Will Scarlet, who has been written many times as Robin Hood's half-brother and a member of Little John's Merry Men. Robin Hood Origins is actually, we haven't talked about this movie in a while on the podcast. It's actually been pretty quiet. The film will star Taron Egerton, who was from Kingsman and Eddie the Eagle earlier this year, as Robin Hood. Eve Hewson, she was in the movie Bridge of Spies, as Maid Marian, and Jamie Foxx as the, quote, battle-hardened but war-weary Little John, unquote. The film has already been described as a gritty, realistic take on the famous story of Robin Hood, and Dorn is now, of course, being eyed for the moment of Will Scarlet. Now, he hasn't gotten the role yet, he's only being eyed, but Dorn has shown other people that, shown some people that he has acting chops. We just kind of assume that, he's in 50 Shades of Grey, he's not a good actor. That's not true, because Dakota Johnson's in 50 Shades of Grey, and she's done some projects that has shown that she, given the right material, she's awesome. She's great. So Jamie Dornan maybe will finally show his acting chops, maybe, out after he finishes 50 Shades of Grey. Right now he can be seen in The Ninth Life of Louis Drax and Anthropod. Both films have been getting some good word of mouth. Anthropod being the one that's getting a lot more better reviews than The Ninth Life of Louis Drax, but there you go. Robin Hood Origins currently does not have a release date. Jared Leto is set to play Andy Warhol in the Andy Warhol biopic. Jared Leto, of course, can currently be seen as the Joker in Suicide Squad, and is set to star in the sequel to Blade Runner in a supporting role fashion, but his next project could be a big hit as well. Leto is set to star and produce in Warhol, the biopic to the famous artist Andy Warhol. And for those that are not in the know, what rock have you been living under in? Because Andy Warhol, even if you're not an art person, you should know who Andy Warhol is. Was a Pittsburgh-born artist with, I'm so mean in this podcast today. Is a Pittsburgh-born artist who had hypochondria that found his calling while at the Carnegie Institute of Technology. His work took aim at commercialism while using well-known imagery to comment on fame and consumerism. This kind of that was the very dirty nitpick of what his work was all about. The film will be written by Terrence Winter, who also wrote The Wolf of Wall Street, and will use the book by Victor Brauchis titled Warhol, the Biography from 1989 as a jumping off point. As for Leto, it kind of seems perfect because Leto, we know he takes his all his roles that he does very seriously. Acting would be his own art, so he would take his own art seriously, and it almost seems perfect and makes sense that he would play Andy Warhol. He probably wouldn't be on top of people's lists to ever play Andy Warhol, but it makes sense when you kind of look back and think about when you kind of take a step back and think about it, I should say. So yeah, that should be interesting. The film doesn't have a studio just yet, but the team so far could change that very soon. In the meantime, Leto will be finishing up Blade Runner 2 once Blade Runner 2 starts filming. I think that starts filming soon as well. The final bit of casting news: Bill Hader joins Power Rangers as Alpha 5. The new Power Rangers film is gearing up for a potential trailer drop, as they've already released posters earlier this week showing us a glimpse of the Power Rangers Zords, and now we have a casting announcement in Bill Hader playing fan favorite character Alpha 5. For those not in the know, what's wrong with you? Alpha 5 was a robot who, seriously, I'm coming off as me in this podcast. Alpha 5 was a robot who helps the Power Rangers, and we assume that Hader will probably voice the character. We don't probably assume that he will be playing Alpha 5. I think he's just going to be voicing him. Either way, Power Rangers news is great. It's pretty cool. Power Rangers is directed by Dean Israelite and will star a bunch of newcomers, not necessarily newcomers, but unknown actors, I should say, as the Power Rangers. But it will star Bryan Cranston as Zordon. Again, we don't know if he's just doing the voice or if he actually will appear as the big floating head. And Elizabeth Banks as the villain as Rita Repulsa. The film opens on March 24th next year. I read this, there was a few news items. This is the first one that I read this week. I was like, you have to be kidding me. Why would they ever put that out? Paramount Pictures will reportedly lose $115 million on monster trucks. The movie Monster Trucks. You know, sometimes you can tell when a movie is not going to be good. You can tell that it's going to be, as the term a lot of people like to use, box office bomb. You can see it kind of from a mile away. However, it takes a special movie for a studio to brace itself months before the release of the movie. And that is the case with Paramount Pictures' movie Monster Trucks. Because a report from the Hollywood Reporter says an unnamed source claims the studio will lose $115 million on their adaptation of the Mattel-based film Monster Trucks. That same source even said the film was supposed to appeal to a broader audience, but since has become more of a kids movie. And to give you a broader look on how Paramount probably felt about this, way before this news came out, they have changed the release date a number of times. I know of at least 2 of them, and there were big gaps between the release dates. Now, I wasn't excited for Monster Trucks at all, and then the trailer came out and looked kind of goofy. It looked like probably one of those family movies, one of those, family movies that kids are going to want to go watch and their parents are going to have to go, suck it up. But even the trailers, they look like kids movie. It looked like a kids movie. It looked like a fun little family movie. I don't get how they thought that Monster Trucks was supposed to appeal to a broader audience. Because that trailer didn't look like it was trying to bring in a broader audience. That looked like a straight up, again, kids kind of family movie, which is nothing wrong. But if you're going to come out and say, it wanted to be a proper, broader audience, and then you release that trailer, I think we're talking about 2 very different movies. And I think we are, because the movie stars Jane Levi, who has been known to be picky with her projects, and well-deserved, because everything she's been in so far has been great. I don't know how they got her in here. She probably saw the script, like the first script, and they're like, oh, this sounds awesome. And then they started filming, they started changing stuff, and she was like, dang it. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know her personally. So Monster Trucks will now come out on January 13th, and there's only been 1 trailer, and Paramount's already bracing itself. So I don't know. I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens. Monster Truck also stars Lucas Till, again, Jane Levi's just mentioned, Rob Lowe, Amy Ryan, Barry Pepper, and Danny Glover. Here's a what if kind of deal, and I'm kind of trying to imagine how this will play out, or would have played out. The Blair Witch project directors wanted to do a prequel film. Blair Witch is currently in theaters, and it was okay. It wasn't awesome. But when the Blair Witch Project came out back in 1999, it instantly became one of the most profitable films of all time. And then they did Book of Shadows and, screwed everything up. But if producer Greg Hall and directors Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez had their way, we could have gotten another Blair Witch movie in a prequel form. In a pretty cool piece, which I will link down below in the description area if you want to read it, on IndieWire, they interviewed the three and they said that they had plans for more films, one of them being a prequel set in 18th century New England. Hale explained that the studio, which happens to be Lionsgate, wasn't interested in their take, saying, "We were definitely shut down. They instinctively wanted something more distinctly connected to the original film. As the guys who made the first film, it was weird for us to go back to the found footage well." Sanchez then elaborated, saying they mapped out the entire franchise and even said, quote, "We would have loved to make a Blair Witch movie. They just decided to go in a different direction. We had no power. It's not ours. It belongs to Lionsgate." And despite all that, they were very supportive, all three of them, of the new Blair Witch film, even saying that they worked very closely with writer Simon Barrett and director Adam Wingard, saying that they had the both of them had a lot of respect and love for the original, and that if they deviated away from the mythology, they wanted to make sure that the deviation made sense. So anyway, a lot more quotes in the IndieWire story. Now, of course, Lionsgate in Hollywood is a different animal completely today than it was back then. So if they wanted to go that route today, of course, not with the found footage idea, because it takes place in 18th century New England when there was no cameras, it probably would have, not been odd, and it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal, because Hollywood's all about franchises nowadays and tentpoles and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I probably would have said no too if the last memory that everyone has of Blair Witch is Book of Shadows, but whatever. It would have been interesting. I think it would have been cool. I think they would have kind of delved in a little bit to who the witch was and stuff like that, and the town that it was before all that. So yeah, it could be interesting. It would have been interesting if that happened. Duncan Jones' newest film, Mute, will connect to one of his previous films. Duncan Jones, who directed Warcraft earlier this year, is set to start production on his new film called Mute next month. However, one little nugget of news has dropped that changes the film a bit for fans of Jones' past films, more specifically Moon, which was the movie that put him on the map. Jones answered a question on Twitter when he was asked if Mute had any connections to any of his other films, more particularly Moon or Source Code, which Jones surprisingly answered yes, that Mute does have a shared connection, or the word related, as he used in the tweet. Mute is related to his other film, Moon. Now, if you haven't watched Moon, first of all, after this podcast is over, go watch it, because that movie is amazing, and it has Sam Rockwell in it, and that's all I'm going to tell you, and it takes place on the moon. That's all I'm going to tell you, because the less you know about that movie, the more better your experience is going to be watching it. Just watch it. Just watch Moon. Sam Rockwell, directed by Duncan Jones. It's awesome. It's completely worth your time. Go watch it. It's the movie that put him on the map. Go watch it. Anyway, Mute, which has actually been a passion project for 12 years for Jones, which he will direct, of course, and co-write, stars Alexander Skarsgård as Leo Beller, a mute bartender who goes on a journey into the underbelly of the city to figure out what happened to his missing partner. During his trip, he meets a pair of American surgeons. One of them will actually be played by Paul Rudd. Now, Sam Rockwell does make an appearance, or will appear in a small part, in the film. Now, of course, now that we know that it's related to Moon, the question is, will he be playing the same character or someone else? We'll find out. Mute doesn't have a release date just yet, but since it is going to be since they are going to start filming next month, I assume we'll probably get one next year as well. We'll see. We'll find out. And here's the last news item of the podcast, and this is the other news item where I was like, you've got to be kidding me when I read this. Disney CEO not expecting Rogue One to be a big hit like The Force Awakens. Now, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is almost upon us. It does have some major catching up to do with non-fans and general audiences. For those still not in the know, Rogue One is a spin-off / prequel. No, not like the episode prequel. Settle down. Rogue One tells the story of the rebels that stole the plans of the Death Star in between the events of Episode 3 and Episode 4, aka Rogue One takes place before the events of Episode 4, A New Hope. In fact, multiple reports this summer said the film would lead right into the opening of A New Hope. Of course, other stuff came out like the dirty word in Hollywood right now, reshoots and possible editing changes in the room, and more recently, this is not as big a deal as some people made it out to be. There's a new composer that was hired, whatever. Anyway, the story here is that Disney CEO Bob Iger is saying something that I don't think a lot of people, especially those that, love the bash films before they even watch them, you know who you are, or, that love to see people's hard work go down the drain, have either not been thinking about or have not been thinking about because they have a blinding love for Star Wars and they just see Star Wars in the title and they're like, no, they can do no wrong, except for the prequels, of course. But Iger told Variety in an interview that he doesn't think Rogue One will make Star Wars The Force Awakens money. His actual quote, "We never felt it would do the level that Force Awakens did." But he also mentions that the level of interest is as high as it was for The Force Awakens. So when I first read this quote in the story, I'll be honest, I thought he was a bit pretentious. I was like, we're not going to do that big money. It's Star Wars and that. Don't matter. No. And then I looked back. I stepped back. And I thought, he's probably right. Look, The Force Awakens was the first Star Wars movie in years that was not in theaters that we've been waiting for. Of course, all the terrible prequel films. But they were killing it with the animated TV stuff. Clone Wars, Rebels, which is going on right now. They were killing it with that. And the novels and the comics and all that stuff. But when The Force Awakens was announced as a new episode, everyone was just clamoring toward it. Then they got the team together. They had J.J. Abrams back. They got, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Luke Hamill back. They got all those. Did I just call him Luke Hamill? Mark Hamill. They got all of them back, and people started clamoring for it, and it kind of became like this event film. Like if you weren't there opening weekend, you were a loser. You were watching the second week. What's wrong with you? It kind of became like that. Like The Force Awakens just became this big film that just kind of was its own monster and its own beast. And now that we know that there's going to be more Star Wars films, it's like, okay, yeah, like all the excitement for all the next episodes is gone down. And now maybe some people know there's going to be like these standalone movies like Rogue One. But maybe not everyone knows that about Rogue One. So, in my opinion, Disney has to like try to, get these people who are not in the know, hey, Rogue One is a prequel story that takes place before the original trilogy. None of the characters, you're not going to see Rey, you're not going to see Finn, you're not going to see, Kylo Ren, you're going to see Darth Vader, but you're not going to see, all these characters that, you fell in love with or that you've gotten to know now for one movie. And you're going to see new characters. Don't know how it's going to turn up for them since it is a movie set in the past, or like the past, yeah, in the timeline. It's the past. But his comments about Rogue One not being, not making Star Wars The Force Awakens money, it could be true. We don't know how Rogue One's going to be. We know now that the overall team behind the new Star Wars franchise is in good hands. But what's going to happen with Rogue One? You can say what you want about reshoots. Reshoots aren't always a bad thing. There have been films that went back and got reshot and turned out to be great. Mad Max Fury Road, for example. We talked about that earlier. That got a lot of reshoots. Not just because of the weather delays and everything. That went back, the studio saw the cut. They're like, let's reshoot some stuff. And they went and reshot some stuff. And look what happened. We got an awesome action film. So, I don't know. I mean, will it make Star Wars Force Awakens money? Probably not. It doesn't mean it's not going to make a shit ton of money. Because let's face it, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is going to make a shit ton of money.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
But, whatever. We'll see what happens. Rogue One comes out this December. Alright, so that's all the news items that we have, at least at the time of this recording. Let's go to trailer talk. There was a bunch of trailers that came out. The first trailer for Passengers, the Chris Pratt, Jennifer Lawrence sci-fi film came out. I thought it was a great trailer. There was some stuff that maybe I could have done without, but overall it looks pretty cool, especially considering that we've been waiting for something to come out for this trailer, and it finally came out. Talked about Keanu Reeves earlier. He has a new film called The Whole Truth. That's down there. The new Brad Pitt movie. I'm not going to talk about the gossip. This is not a gossip podcast. Someone's going through a divorce. Shame on you for making fun of it. So the new Brad Pitt movie with Marion Cotillard trailer, Allies, up there, or down there, I should say. A new Smurfs movie is happening, a fully CGI, none of that CGI live action hybrid stuff. That's down there. A new trailer for Hidden Figures, which is based off a true story about the woman in NASA that helped them out during one of the launches. 2 trailers for Bad Santa came out. Bad Santa 2 came out, I should say. One of them was a red band, one of them was a green band, so you can go check that out. A new trailer, the first trailer for a comedy film called Fist Fight with Ice Cube and Charlie Day came out. That looks pretty funny. Trailer for a thriller, The Eyes of My Mother. Looks really creepy. It's shot in black and white, which I don't know why. When I watched the trailer, it made it look even creepier. It's actually playing at the Chicago International Film Festival, and hopefully I get to go see it. Michael Fassbender's new led crime drama film, Trespass Against Us, came out. That looks awesome. Brendan Gleeson's in there as well. It looks awesome. And we have the TV spots for Ghost in the Shell. Now, I'm not a huge Ghost in the Shell fan. I think I've said in the podcast before. The way they released these TV spots were they're each 5-10 seconds long. They're all very short. It gives us very brief glimpses of what's going on. I don't know if this was the best way to get your first footage out there, but I don't know. So we get to see Scarlett Johansson as the Major in the film. We get to see her in costume. We get to see some interesting stuff. Aesthetically, this is what I assume a live-action Ghost in the Shell movie would look like. But I'm sure fans will disagree, but, there's that. And I know there's a lot more to Ghost in the Shell than it just being an action movie. Everyone just assumes it's based off an anime, so there's going to be, nudity and weird, monster stuff and, just action. No. Ghost in the Shell actually has a lot more going on. I know that just hearing people talk about it. It's not really action heavy, although I'm sure there'll be action in the movie. So the TV spots came out. I thought they were okay. I didn't really love them too much. Again, aesthetically, it looks really cool. I don't know too much about it, but we'll see what happens. So I asked a friend of mine who is a huge Ghost in the Shell fan to help me out, and I asked his opinion on stuff. He actually last time we talked about Ghost in the Shell, he was like, you should have me on the podcast. So I would love to talk about it. So I asked his opinion on it. He actually sent something in. So we're going to hear him out. His name is Alan, by the way. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a huge fan of Ghost in the Shell. So you'll hear a fan talk about Ghost in the Shell. So that should change things up a little bit here. I edited it down just a little bit because the beginning of the thing he sent me, he was actually eating, so I kind of just edited that little part out. But yeah, I mean, he goes into it a lot better than I would. And again, like I mentioned, Ghost in the Shell is not just about like a shoot 'em up kind of anime. It's there's a lot more going on to it, and I'll let him talk about it. And again, he goes into it quite a bit. He goes into it a lot more than I thought he was going to go into, which is fine. Because I've seen Ghost in the Shell. It's always been on my mind. I've been wanting to watch it, and I still have enough time to watch it before the film comes out. So here's my friend Alan talking about Ghost in the Shell. Hopefully you enjoy it. He goes on for a little bit, which is fine, again, for me, but hopefully for you too. So here's my friend Alan.
So I remember you, Christian, telling me about the whitewashing scandal in when they cast I don't know what's her name, Black Widow or something. I don't know what her name is. When they cast her for the role as Major. One big theme in Ghost in the Shell is that you have the ability to cast off your whole body and leave only your brain, and then you put that brain into a box, quote unquote, and it becomes what's known as a cyber brain. So that brain I can insert just like you would a flash drive into any other body. I can make it a black body, Japanese body, white body, Mexican body. I can turn myself if I wanted to put my brain into a little cart that just goes broom broom and goes in circles and circles to control my mind, I could if I wanted to. There's no limitations to it in this universe. So the whitewashing scandal is kind of stupid in a universe whose lore has people who, for example, in the anime, there is one of the first episodes, I believe, of season. I believe it is season 2. Yeah, I think it's season 2, and it's where they have spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched it. But if you haven't watched it, I mean, it's kind of late. But basically, how it works is there's a hostage situation where things go down, and basically you end up finding out that this government official of Japan had his cyber brain taken out of his mind, put into a suitcase, and the terrorist took his brain and put it into a person's head, right? So everybody thinks this government official is who he is, but unbeknownst to them, it's somebody else's brain and they're controlling it. So this universe lets you do this. People literally steal other people's bodies. Men in one of the episodes of season 1, one of the quote unquote crooked politicians, like, oh, I like to switch my cyber brain out with the geisha. So he liked being a woman. So he would go ahead and switch his mind out with the geishas, right? So it's kind of like, if I could do something like that, if I could steal someone's pet body, or if I could switch my mind with the geishas, what's to prevent me from just changing my skin color or ethnicity or looks? There's nothing stopping it. So this argument of, oh my God, it's whitewashing for Hollywood. No, shut up. It's not. If you're a real fan of the series, you will accept the fact that color doesn't matter, really. The major changes her appearance every single movie. Basically, there's something different about her, and she always says she's in a different body. Number 2, let's see. Going out to the shorts. So the shorts are, I guess, quote unquote short. I kind of wanted more, but the one that really stuck out to me was when I guess the main character, the major, is walking through this hallway, right, with the gun pointed out, and she comes upon these Buddhist monks all around this server, jacked in Matrix style, right? It's really, really huge because the Ghost in the Shell has this really, really big thing. Like, it's one of the biggest animes that I fell in love with because it talked about transhumanism. And for people who don't know what transhumanism is, it's people who believe, I guess, that eventually mankind will replace most, if not all, of our human components with machines. And that's what we'll become. We'll become like androids, part machine, part, I guess, flesh and bone. And that we will transcend. And it also takes, and transhumanism eventually leads to what's known as a singularity, where we could create artificial intelligence and we would be, communing with them. So we would have machine AIs that think just like us and can interact with us, and we can put them into like a body. We could like create human hybrid bodies so that even they have children. And that's something that Ghost in the Shell kind of went towards, but hasn't gotten there yet. But I can imagine it happening because of how the universe is. There's also the thought of singularity where we all unite together, which in season 2, spoiler, Kuze, one of the main, in the English dub, of course, one of the main anti-hero / villains, unites these refugees from World War III and World War IV, who are living in Japan and are being like ostracized and mistreated. He unites them with his mind. So his mind becomes a server, just like the one in the short, and everybody from all over Japan that's a refugee is plugged in, and everybody is sharing information, and they're starting to unite together, and they're starting to create a political movement, and it's starting to spread. It's not just in Japan anymore. Refugees from other parts of the planet are coming together, and it starts showing how governments realize this. So like, oh my God, this man is uniting not only the people here. Japan was an experiment. It's uniting around the world. And what happens if he starts uniting these people against governments? So of course they see him as dangerous, and they purposely go and kill him at the end of the series, which sucked because everybody loved him. And it's one of the scenes, like, if you can go on and ask about it, and people are still pissed about it, but they realize that it's realistic, which that anime is not afraid to go there. They will throw so much realism in there that it'll make your head spin. Now I haven't seen much more in terms of like how the story is going to be, because I'm really, really iffy, because Ghost in the Shell is a series that spans multiple episodes, and it makes you think. There's more talking than action going on in Ghost in the Shell. It's an action, I don't know, it's very, very political. I mean, it does a lot of world building. So I'm going to be very, very pissed off if Hollywood is like, we're going to make an action flick and we're not going to build the world. We're not going to build the characters, because every character is good. We have characters that are almost fully cyberneticized, which is like the main character. She's all robot, guys. She's only a brain. And even in season 2, that gets destroyed. And she becomes like a living essence in the internet. And she can now inhabit any cyber brain. So she's almost unkillable, basically, at this point, because she's achieved almost like singularity herself by herself. So that's where we're going, you know? And then you have, but going back to it, you have regular human characters, and they build up the weaknesses. So I really liked it because it explored it. So how one of the human characters, Tobisa, in the English version, kind of like lamented, like he doesn't want to become cyberneticized. He doesn't. He wants to stay as human as possible. He has a couple of them to help him see better, a couple of them to help him react faster. But overall, he's like 95% human still. And everybody else who's like cyberneticized is always telling them, if you did this, why do you still have your arms? You can, because he fires a revolver. And one time as he's getting older, he complains how the revolver kind of hurts his hands. And they tell him, well, why don't you just like remove the hands and become cyberneticized? But he's like, no, I prefer to stay human. I not because he hates cybernetics, but because he thinks there's no reason for him to. He's not just going to lop off his arm. And that's what I liked about it, because it's kind of like, okay, you have these people who are fully cyberneticized, people who are halfway, and you have people who don't want to be cyberneticized, but there's no one that like hates cybernetics except for like some of the villains. And it explores the pros and cons of it, and how is it that people react to each other. Like, because there's this big issue where people, if you look at the world right now, they're like, oh, if I'm able to replace this hand here with a cybernetic one, and I have a job that requires me to type, right? And I become the best typist because I have it, and then my pay increases. Then that means that the poor people who can't afford these cybernetics won't earn as much as me, and they'll lose work. And this anime explored that, and it pointed out the fact that while yes, people will have an advantage, it comes down to actual individual skill at your position, because everyone who's on this team with the major, they're the best of the best. Like, this is an organization that it's like Black Ops. They kill people, they murder political prisoners, and they kill anyone who like tries to destroy the United States. So Japan in this case. So you can think of them as like more badass than James Bond and shit like that. These guys are the ones that get shit done. They prevent wars and end wars before they begin, if you can imagine something like this. That being said, it will disappoint me greatly if in the movie they skip over character development. They skip over the fact that there are all these competing things going on in the series. It's not just like shooting shit. If it's one movie, it'll really piss me off too, because this series is something you need a trilogy for this series if you're really gonna delve into it. Like, the beginning could be the introduction, where you're like, okay, they world build, there's some action, you figure out who the enemy is and leave it on a cliffhanger. Awesome, I would be really happy with that. Then the second movie can be the big like reveal of certain things, like the most action in the second one being like, because that's when the big conflict's going on, and then the last one being a resolution of the series. Costume wise, I like the costume so far. I like her costume, how she has it, because it reminds me of her classic jacket that she wears in the anime and in the movies. Except most people, like, it depends. If you watch the Ghost in the Shell anime season 1 and 2, she wears the black jacket. If you watch the movies, she's more known for wearing the red jacket. And having like shorter hair, more purplish too in the anime, and more like dark purple like she has in the movie, in the animated movies. But let's see. That aside, I think it's looking really good. I don't like that I don't see the other main characters, so I'm not sure if this is going to take place before she joins the government. I hear it a lot when they're like, I like the main character and stuff like that, but she seemed like a machine, right? Like she was, she's pretty cool. She says some funny things, or she's like overly flirtatious. But a lot of people are like, man, she seemed like kind of like a robot, which is the whole point. It's one of the main arguments. But it shows how She, even though she doesn't have like the limbs, like she doesn't feel like we feel. She doesn't, feel the cold. She can turn off pain. She can do all of this. You lose her humanity, but in the end, emotions are what make you human. So she has not lost any of her emotions, which is shown by that movie. Like even her, where all she is a brain, or she doesn't even have her original brain. She has a fully mechanical brain, so there's nothing left of her that is human, realistically. Maybe like a synthetic brain, because the original one was destroyed. That, even when she's lost everything, where she literally is just a consciousness on the internet inhabiting this brain, she still has emotions. She's still human. It's a really big thing for trans. I mean, I'm making a lot about it, and I'm going on wild tangents here. But for fans like me and transhumanists like me, this show was like a defining show. Like it was amazing. I would rewatch it all the time, and I'm really excited for the movie. I don't really see anything wrong with the movies because it kind of like seems to be stemming from it. But like I said, big thing I'm worried about is lack of character development, lack of lore development, like world development and explaining why shit is the way it is. This is not an action show by far. It is mostly a political show. So if the whole movie is action, I'm going to be so turned. I'm going to downvote the shit out of it. I'm also seeing how, Ghost in the Shell, the Major is very sexual. She's open about her sexual orientation. She's like lesbian, which I did see that in the short. It shows. And she also likes to wear like next to nothing, basically. So I did automatically see for our Western audiences how they covered her up a lot. And I'm like, okay, I saw that. Excuse me. I saw that immediately because, it's not Japan here. Other than that, the shorts didn't really show much. I did see, I think, the scene like from the movies where she wakes up for the first time and realizes that, feels herself and realizes she's not human and how we perceive it. She's more mechanical now. So I'm kind of hoping that that's part of the origins. Other than that, I mean, I just finished watching these right now, and I'm just going off of what's coming in my head. I'm pretty sure I can make like a really thorough review of them once I see more. But as per what you asked for, Christian, I mean, as a fan, this is what I would. What I thought about it. I mean, it's really good. I'm really excited. I just really hope that Hollywood doesn't screw it up, because they've done a lot of screw ups with a lot of movies, and I'm not confident that they can do it without the original people who made it directing this movie.
All right, so that was Alan. Thank you, Alan, if you're listening to the podcast, for that. And let's get to this week's releases. The first limited release we have is the Beauty and the Beast film from France, not the Emma Watson one, by the way. This one was directed by Christophe Gans, who directed Brotherhood of the Wolf. And it is the French version of Beauty and the Beast. It stars Léa Seydoux as Belle and Vincent Cassel as the Beast. Again, it looks beautiful. I'm getting very mixed reviews from what I've been reading. That comes out this week. The next limited release is The Dressmaker, based on the novel by Rosalie Ham. A glamorous woman played by Kate Winslet returns to her small town in rural Australia. With her sewing machine and a haughty culture style, she transforms the women and exacts sweet revenge on those who did her wrong. The film also stars Liam Hemsworth, Sarah Snook, Judy Davis, and Hugo Weaving. The next limited release is kind of more a little personal one, Dirty 30. It's not getting a theater release, it's actually getting one on video on demand. I just love the three actresses involved, the three leads involved, Grace Helbig, Hannah Hart, and Mary Hart. They're one of the funniest YouTubers that I watch. I was about to say that I know. I don't know them personally, that I watch, but their movie comes out 30/30. It's really funny. You should watch the trailer. It looks really funny, and I love every time those three get together because it's just gonna be an all-out blast. So if you're a YouTuber or if you just try to watch a lot of YouTubers, those three are definitely three you should check out. Also in the film is Anna Kana, who is also extremely funny, but serious when she needs to be as well. But 30/30, check it out. I haven't watched it. I'm going to try to watch it, but yeah. Alright, so the next limited release, the last wide limited release, I should say, is Queen of Katwe, which will actually get a wide release next week, but it gets a limited release today, based on the book and ESPN magazine article by Tim Crothers. At the age of 10, Fiona Motzi, I think that's how you're saying her name, played by a newcomer, sees her world rapidly change when the young girl from the streets of rural Uganda is introduced to the game of chess. Film stars David Oyelowo and Lupita Nyong'o. Been getting some good reviews from what I've read, but we'll see what happens. Again, limited release this week, Queen of Katwe, and next week we'll get a wide release. I'll mention it again next week as well. So the wide releases this week. The first one is Storks. Storks have moved on from delivering babies to packages, but when an order for a baby appears, the best delivery stork must scramble to fix the error by delivering the baby. The voice cast includes Annie Samberg, Jennifer Aniston, Ty Burrell, Kelsey Grammer, Katie Crown, Keegan-Michael Key, Jordan Peele, and Danny Trejo. It looks pretty cool. It's being done by Warner Brothers Animation. Did of course the Lego Movie, and are doing all the other Lego movies that come out. So I don't know. It looks okay. I mean, the last trailer definitely made me get more into it, but I don't know if I'll be watching it. The movie I will be watching this weekend, which I really want to see, is The Magnificent Seven, directed by Anton Fuqua, and of course based on the Western classic, which was of course based off the Akira Kurosawa film, also a classic. 7 gunmen in the Old West gradually come together to help a poor village against savage thieves, or in this case, a wealthy businessman who wants to take over the town. The film's impressive cast includes Denzel Washington, Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, Brian Hung Lee, Manuel Garcia Ruffalo, Vincent D'Onofrio, Haley Bennett, Peter Sarsgaard, Luke Grimes, and Matt Bomer. It looks great. I have been a fan of this movie since this cast started coming together and from the very first trailer, so I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Magnificent Seven, you can't touch it, even though it already was touched with the Akira Kurosawa, because it was based on the Akira Kurosawa movie. I don't mind, again, remakes are just the state of Hollywood now. You got to get used to it. You can bitch and complain all you want, but they're going to keep happening, and it's not like, when a remake comes out, someone from the studio is going to be like, we need all your copies, and we're just going to put them all in one pile and just burn every copy to the ground. That's not how it works. It's not. And I hate that I have to keep bringing it up every time I do, or every time I talk about a remake, because everyone's just, like, oh, why do they keep remaking stuff? Because you already have a built-in audience. It's a safer bet. And, a lot of times when an original film comes out, none of you go watch it because you think it sucks, or you think it looks bad, without even watching it. So shut your mouths. That was my last main thing of the podcast, by the way. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to it. So Magnificent Seven and Storks are your wide releases. Your limited releases are Queen of Katwe, The Dressmaker, and Beauty and the Beast, the French version. And again, 30 if you want to go watch it on demand and stuff like that, and iTunes and stuff like that. Alright, so this week's box office predictions. My picks last week were Blair Witch at number 1, Bridget Jones' Baby, at number 2, Snowden at number 3, Sully at number 4, and When the Bow Breaks at number 5. I was wrong. And last week's box office was actually Sully at number 1, Blair Witch at number 2, Bridget Jones' Baby at number 3, Snowden at number 4, and Don't Breathe hanging in there, coming back into the top 5 at the number 5 position. Good for them. So this week, I don't know, it's really hard because, usually when there's an animated movie, you're like, yeah, that's going to be the clear-cut winner this weekend. However, The Magnificent Seven, A-list cast, it's a Western, it's PG-13, so there's going to be more people get to watch it. And personally, I'm more excited for The Magnificent Seven. That's not how I usually base my box office predictions, but I'm basing it this way. I'm okay if Storks is number 1, but I really want Magnificent Seven to be number 1. So I'm going to put it in number 1 position. Storks will be number 2. Sully will hang in there at number 3. Bridget Jones' Baby will hang in at number 4. And Snowden will be number 5. You notice that Blair Witch, which came in number 2 at the box office, is not even in my top 5 picks. I think there's going to be a massive drop-off from that movie. I think all the people that really wanted to watch it came out last weekend, and maybe word of mouth, which hasn't been all that great, is definitely going to kill any kind of momentum Blair Witch has. So again, my picks this week: Magnificent Seven at number 1, Storks at number 2. I'm okay if those are 2 switched off, but whatever. Sully at number 3, Bridget Jones' Baby at number 4, and Snowden at number 5. thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Just by the time I'm recording this, I know this is going to be a late podcast, so if you're listening to this right before you go to sleep, good night. But if you're listening to this the day after, hello. I hope you're having a good day. How you doing? So anyway, thank you guys for so much for listening to the podcast this week. You guys are awesome. You guys are the reason why I keep doing it. I mean, I keep doing it because I want to do the podcast, but I keep doing it. I know there's people out there listening. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Again, it was a weird week this week in movies. There was some stuff that just was like, very quick and nitty-gritty and all that kind of stuff. So thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you guys have a good weekend this week. And let me know down below. I want to get you guys more involved. For those of you guys that listen, I want to get you guys more involved in the podcast. So what was your favorite news item this week? What movie are you looking forward toward? Magnificent Seven or Storks? Have you already seen those movies or one of those movies? And what did you guys think of them? And yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I am your host, Christian. Make sure to go like my Facebook page, facebook.com/moviepits. It is, of course, the podcast is, I said it again, Facebook page. You guys can be up to date on what we're going to talk about on the podcast. There are even some news items that I put up on the Facebook page that we don't talk about on the podcast, and sometimes vice versa. Not often, but sometimes. You guys go check that out. Give me a like over there. I'm trying to do more stuff with the Facebook page, just so it's not just movie news. But yeah, so you can go like that. Link will be down below just in case. But once again, it's facebook.com/moviepits. You can also go find my written reviews and some more stuff. I'm trying to do more stuff on that page as well. My WordPress account, which is where I do all my written reviews, some monthly preview stuff. I always talk about the movies that are coming out in the month. Of course, it's sometimes constantly changing, but that happens. And again, I'm trying to do more stuff on that page as well. So you can go follow me over there at movieswithchris.wordpress.com. That's movieswithchris.wordpress.com. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. All the links to the trailers will also be down below. The Ghost in the Shell TV spots will be in one link. Hopefully, that's the playlist link that's up there. And yeah. So thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully, you guys have a good weekend, or are having a good weekend. And as always, go watch some movies.